The spark that ignited the galaxy. The vast expanse of space had long been humanity's final frontier. For centuries, mankind dreamed of reaching the stars, of exploring distant worlds, and meeting alien civilizations. When humanity finally achieved faster-than-light travel, those dreams became a reality. But reality, as it often does, proved far more complex and dangerous than anyone could have imagined. Captain Ilara Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Defiant, her eyes fixed on the swirling blue-green orb of the planet Novus Prime. It was a jewel of a world, teeming with life and resources, the kind of planet that could sustain a thriving human colony. But there was just one problem. The Zarkonian Empire had claimed it first. Status report. Ilara barked, her voice cutting through the tense silence on the bridge. Lieutenant Commander Jackson, her tactical officer, responded without taking his eyes off his console. Zarkonian fleet holding position at the edge of the system, Captain. No signs of aggressive movement. Yet. Ilara nodded, her jaw clenched. The standoff had been going on for days, ever since the Defiant and its small fleet of support ships had arrived in the system. The Zarkonians, a reptilian species known for their territorial aggression, had immediately moved to block Earth's colonization efforts. Open a channel to the Zarkonian flagship, Ilara ordered. A moment later, the stern face of Admiral Kazlar appeared on the main view screen, his scales shimmering with an iridescent purple hue. Captain Chen, the alien growled, "I grow weary of this dance. Remove your ships from our territory immediately, or face the consequences." Ilara met his gaze unflinchingly. "Admiral, we've been over this. Novus Prime lies in unclaimed space, according to the Galactic Accord. Earth has every right to establish a colony here." Kazlar's eyes narrowed. "The Accord is a human construct, forced upon the galaxy by your kind. We do not recognize its authority." "Then perhaps we should let the Galactic Council mediate this dispute," Ilara suggested, though she knew it was a long shot. The Zarkonians had little respect for the Council's rulings. "Enough," Kazlar roared. "You have 1 standard hour to withdraw, or we will open fire. This is your final warning." The transmission cut off abruptly. Ilara turned to her crew, her mind racing. They were outnumbered and outgunned, but retreating now would mean abandoning the thousands of colonists in cryo-sleep aboard the fleet's transport ships. More than that, it would embolden the Zarkonians to make even more aggressive territorial claims. "Options?" she asked, looking at her senior staff. Commander Sarah Reeves, her XO, spoke up. "We could try to outmaneuver them, use the planet's gravity well to slingshot our ships past their blockade. It's risky, but it might give us a chance to get the colony ship's planet side." Lieutenant Zara Kim, the ship's young science officer, chimed in. "Captain, I've been analyzing the Zarkonian ship configurations. Their shields have a weakness. They're vulnerable to focused graviton bursts. If we can modify our deflector array." Ilara held up a hand, a plan forming in her mind. "Good thinking, both of you. Here's what we're going to do." As the hour ticked away, the crew of the Defiant worked feverishly to implement their captain's daring strategy. Engineering teams reconfigured the deflector dish, while tactical officers plotted intricate flight paths through the planetary system. With just minutes to spare, Ilara opened a channel to the rest of the human fleet. "All ships, this is Captain Chen. You all know what's at stake here. We didn't come all this way to turn tail and run. The Zarkonians want to test our resolve. Let's show them what humanity is made of." A chorus of affirmatives came back over the comms. Ilara allowed herself a small smile. These were her people, brave, resourceful, and unwilling to back down from a challenge. As the deadline approached, the Zarkonian ships began to move, their weapons powering up. Ilara took a deep breath, steadying herself. "All ships, execute Maneuver Omega." Now, the human fleet sprang into action. The Defiant and its escort ships surged forward, unleashing a barrage of modified graviton pulses that sent the Zarkonian vessels reeling. Meanwhile, the colony ships used the confusion to make a break for the planet's atmosphere. "They're pursuing the transports," Jackson called out. "Not for long," Ilara muttered. "Helm, bring us about. Let's give our people some cover." The battle that followed was intense and chaotic. The human ships, though outnumbered, fought with a ferocity that seemed to catch the Zarkonians off guard. Ilara's strategy of using the planet's gravity to enhance their maneuverability paid off, allowing them to strike hard and fast before retreating to safety. But the Zarkonians weren't about to give up easily. As the last of the colony ships entered Novus Prime's atmosphere, Admiral Kazlar's flagship launched a devastating volley at the Defiant. "Direct hit to our starboard nacelle," Reeves shouted as the ship shuddered violently. "We're venting plasma." Ilara gripped her chair, her mind racing. They'd accomplished their primary objective. The colonists were safe. But at what cost? "All ships, fall back to Rally Point Alpha," she ordered. "We've done what we came here to do." As the battered human fleet limped away from Novus Prime, leaving the fuming Zarkonians behind, Ilara knew that this was only the beginning. The galaxy was about to erupt into chaos, and humanity had just lit the fuse. The flames of conflict spread. The aftermath of the battle for Novus Prime sent shockwaves through the galaxy. As news of the human victory over the numerically superior Zarkonian force spread, reactions varied widely among the numerous alien species that made up the galactic community. Captain Ilara Chen stood before the Galactic Council, her uniform crisp despite the exhaustion evident in her eyes. The circular chamber was filled with representatives from dozens of spacefaring races, their murmurs creating a low hum of tension. "Captain Chen," the Arcturian counselor began, his crystalline form shimmering in the chamber's light, "your actions at Novus Prime have brought us to the brink of war. The Zarkonian Empire demands reparations and the immediate withdrawal of all human presence from the planet." Ilara straightened her shoulders, her voice calm but firm. "Counselors, with all due respect, Earth acted within the boundaries of galactic law. Novus Prime was unclaimed territory, and the Zarkonians had no right to prevent our colonization efforts." The Valeri representative, a being of pure energy contained within an ornate suit, pulsed with agitation. "Be that as it may, Captain, your aggressive response has escalated tensions beyond diplomacy. The Zarkonians are mobilizing their fleet as we speak." As the council descended into heated debate, Ilara's mind raced. She knew that her actions, while necessary to protect the human colonists, had indeed set off a powder keg of interstellar politics. But there was more at stake here than just one planet. "Counselors," she said, raising her voice to be heard above the din, "I urge you to look at the bigger picture. The Zarkonians have been pushing boundaries and bullying smaller species for decades. If we don't stand up to them now, where will it end?" Her words seemed to strike a chord with some of the representatives, particularly those from less powerful civilizations. The Thoraxian delegate, an insectoid being, clicked its mandibles in agreement. "The human speaks truth. My people have long suffered Zarkonian encroachment on our borders." As the council session dragged on, it became clear that the galaxy was divided. Some species saw humanity as a destabilizing force, while others viewed them as potential allies against Zarkonian aggression. No consensus was reached, and Ilara left the chamber with a sense of foreboding. Back aboard the Defiant, newly repaired and resupplied, Ilara briefed her senior staff on the situation. "The Council's indecision has effectively given the Zarkonians free rein," she concluded grimly. "We need to be prepared for anything." Commander Reeves frowned, studying the tactical display. "Intel suggests they're massing a fleet near the sickness corridor. If they push through there, they could threaten a dozen human colonies." Lieutenant Kim spoke up, her young face etched with concern. "Captain, I've been analyzing Zarkonian communication patterns. There's something odd. It's like they're coordinating with someone else, but I can't pinpoint who." Ilara's eyes narrowed. "Keep digging, Lieutenant. If the Zarkonians have found allies, we need to know about it. She turned to address the entire team. Make no mistake, we're on the brink of war. But remember what we're fighting for. Not just our own survival, but the right of all species to exist free from tyranny. As the Defiant and its task force patrolled the edges of human space, tensions continued to escalate. Skirmishes broke out along the borders, with both sides accusing the other of provocation. Ilara found herself constantly on edge, knowing that any encounter could be the spark that ignited all-out war. It was during a routine patrol of the Epsilon sector that everything changed. The Defiant's sensors picked up a distress call from a small mining outpost on a barren moon. As they approached, Ilara's blood ran cold at the sight that greeted them. The outpost was in ruins, its structures reduced to smoldering wreckage. But it wasn't the destruction that caused Ilara's heart to race. It was the ships in orbit. Zarkonian cruisers, yes, but also vessels of a design she'd never seen before. Sleek, black ships that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. What the hell are those? Reeves breathed, staring at the tactical display. Before anyone could respond, the unknown ships suddenly sprang into action. They moved with impossible speed and grace, unleashing weapons that cut through the Zarkonian shields like they weren't even there. All hands, battle stations, Ilara ordered, her mind reeling. Tactical analysis of those new ships. Now, as the Defiant and its escorts engaged the mysterious attackers, Ilara couldn't shake the feeling that everything had just changed. The Zarkonians were no longer the biggest threat. Something far more dangerous had entered the playing field. The battle was brief but intense. The unknown ships, after decimating the Zarkonian force, turned their attention to the human vessels. Ilara watched in horror as two of her escort ships were vaporized in a matter of seconds. "Evasive maneuvers," she shouted. "Get us out of here." As the Defiant fled the battlefield, its hull scored by weapons fire unlike anything they'd encountered before, Ilara knew that the true test of humanity's resolve was just beginning. The galaxy wasn't just about to explode, it was already burning, and Earth would need every ounce of its strength and ingenuity to survive the inferno. Unveiling the shadow, the Defiant limped back to Earth, its hull bearing the scars of its encounter with the mysterious new threat. As soon as they entered the Sol system, Captain Ilara Chen was summoned to an emergency meeting of Earth's highest military and political leaders. The atmosphere in the United Earth Command Center was tense, the air thick with fear and determination. Holographic displays flickered with reports from across human space, each one grimmer than the last. Ilara stood before the assembled leaders, her uniform still smudged with soot from the battle. Captain Chin, Admiral Dueres, the head of Earth's defense forces, began. "Your report is disturbing, to say the least. You're certain these new ships weren't Zarkonian?" Ilara shook her head firmly. "No, sir. Their technology was far beyond anything we've seen from the Zarkonians, or any known species for that matter." The room erupted into murmurs of concern. President Lydia Cortez, a steely-eyed woman with streaks of gray in her dark hair, raised a hand for silence. "What are we dealing with, Captain?" Another alien species entering the conflict. Ilara hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "Madam President, I don't think these are newcomers. The precision of their attack, the way they targeted both us and the Zarkonians, I believe they've been watching us for some time." "Waiting. For what?" someone asked. "For us to be distracted," Ilara replied grimly. "Our conflict with the Zarkonians has left us vulnerable. I think these beings, whoever they are, saw an opportunity and took it." The implications hung heavy in the air. Humanity was now potentially facing a two-front war against enemies they barely understood. Admiral Dueres leaned forward, his weathered face creased with worry. "We need more information. Captain Chen, I'm tasking you and the Defiant with a critical mission. We need you to go back out there, find out everything you can about these new hostiles." Ilara nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. Understood, Admiral. We'll need to resupply and make repairs, but we'll be ready to deploy within 48 hours. As the meeting adjourned, Ilara found herself cornered by Dr. Aisha Patel, Earth's leading xenobiologist. The scientist's eyes gleamed with a mix of fear and excitement. Captain, I'd like to join your mission. If we're dealing with a completely new species, my expertise could be crucial. Ilara considered for a moment, then nodded. Agreed. Report to the Defiant at 600 tomorrow. And Doctor, pack for a long journey. I have a feeling we're in for a wild ride. The next 2 days were a whirlwind of activity. The Defiant underwent rapid repairs and upgrades, its weapon systems enhanced based on the data from their previous encounter. Ilara's crew worked tirelessly, knowing that the fate of humanity might well rest on their shoulders. As they prepared to depart, Ilara addressed her crew over the ship's intercom. We're heading into unknown territory, facing an enemy we don't understand. But remember this, humanity has faced impossible odds before and triumphed. We're resourceful, we're determined, and we never give up. Whatever's out there, we'll face it together. The Defiant slipped out of Earth's orbit, its sleek form quickly lost among the stars. Their mission was clear: gather intelligence, assess the threat, and if possible, find a way to neutralize it. For weeks, they patrolled the fringes of known space, following rumors and scattered reports of strange ship sightings. Dr. Patel worked tirelessly, analyzing every scrap of data they could gather about the mysterious attackers. It was during a routine scan of an uncharted system that they stumbled upon their first real lead. Lieutenant Kim's voice crackled over the comm, excitement evident in her tone. Captain, I'm picking up unusual energy readings from the third planet. It matches the signature of those unknown ships. Ilara's heart raced as she studied the sensor data. The planet was a desolate rock, its surface scarred and pockmarked. But beneath that barren exterior, something was hiding. Take us in, nice and easy, Ilara ordered. Tactical, be ready for anything. As they entered orbit, the planet's secrets began to unveil themselves. Massive structures, previously hidden by some kind of cloaking technology, shimmered into view. And in high orbit, a space station of mind-boggling proportions materialized before their eyes. My God, Dr. Patel breathed, staring at the readouts. Captain, the level of technology we're seeing here, it's beyond anything in our databases. These beings, whoever they are, they're not just advanced. They're ancient. Before Ilara could respond, a massive energy surge erupted from the space station. A beam of pure, blinding light engulfed the Defiant, freezing it in place. Report, Ilara shouted, gripping her chair as the ship shuddered around her. We're caught in some kind of tractor beam, Commander Reeds replied, her fingers flying over her console. Engines are offline, weapons non-responsive. We're being pulled in. As the Defiant was inexorably drawn toward the alien station, Ilara felt a mix of terror and exhilaration. They had found what they were looking for, but at what cost? As the massive docking bay of the station loomed before them, she steeled herself for what was to come. All hands, prepare for potential first contact, she ordered, her voice steady despite her racing heart. Remember your training, stay alert, and no matter what happens, we show them what humanity is made of. The Defiant slipped into the cavernous bay, dwarfed by the sheer scale of the alien construction. As the ship settled onto the deck with a gentle thud, an eerie silence fell over the crew. They were about to come face to face with the beings that had thrown the galaxy into chaos, and the fate of Earth might well rest on what happened next. The ancients awaken. The docking bay of the alien station was a cathedral of technology, its vast expanse filled with structures and machines that defied human comprehension. As Captain Ilara Chen led a small away team out of the Defiant, she felt a sense of awe and trepidation unlike anything she'd experienced before. Stay alert, she murmured to her team, which included Dr. Patel, Commander Reeves, and a squad of Earth's finest Marines. We don't know what we're dealing with here. They had barely taken a dozen steps when a shimmering field of energy materialized around them, forming a translucent corridor. A voice, seemingly coming from everywhere and nowhere at once, reverberated through their minds. Humans, you have entered the domain of the architects. Follow the path. Exchanging wary glances, the team proceeded down the energy corridor. It led them through twisting passages and vast chambers, each more mind-bending than the last. Finally, they emerged into what could only be described as a control center, though it bore little resemblance to anything in human experience. And there, waiting for them, were the architects. They were beings of pure energy, their forms shifting and pulsing with colors beyond the human visual spectrum. Dr. Patel gasped, her scientific mind struggling to process what she was seeing. One of the beings floated forward, its voice resonating in their thoughts. "We have watched your kind for eons, waiting for the day you would be ready. That day has come sooner than we anticipated." Ilara stepped forward, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "Ready for what? Why have you attacked our ships? What do you want from us?" The beam's form rippled, a gesture that might have been amusement or irritation. "We have not attacked you, young one. We have tested you, as we have tested countless species before you." "Tested?" Commander Reeves interjected, her hand instinctively resting on her weapon. "You've brought the galaxy to the brink of war." "The galaxy has always been at war," another architect responded. "Conflict is the crucible of evolution. We simply accelerate the process." Dr. Patel's eyes widened with sudden understanding. "You're not just ancient," she breathed. "You're the precursors, the beings that seeded life throughout the galaxy." The first architect pulsed with approval. "Yes, we are the shapers of worlds, the catalysts of civilizations. And now we face a threat that even we cannot overcome alone." Images flooded the humans' minds, visions of a vast, dark void spreading across the galaxy, consuming everything in its path. Stars winked out of existence, planets crumbled, and entire species vanished in its wake. "The void," the architect explained, its mental voice tinged with what might have been fear. "A force of uncreation that seeks to undo all that we have built. It has slumbered for millions of years, but now it stirs." Ilara's mind reeled as she processed the implications. "And you need our help to stop it. Why us?" "Because you have something that we lost long ago," the architect replied. "Creativity. Unpredictability. The ability to conceive solutions that we, in our ancient wisdom, can no longer fathom." The being's form expanded, enveloping the humans in a field of pure knowledge. In an instant, Ilara and her team understood the true scope of the situation. The Zarkonian conflict, the attacks on their ships, all of it had been orchestrated by the architects to push humanity to its limits, to see if they had the potential to face the coming darkness. "You have proven yourselves worthy," the architect declared. "Now you must unite your species, and then the galaxy, to stand against the void. We will provide you with knowledge and technology beyond your imagining, but the will to fight, that must come from you." As the weight of this cosmic responsibility settled on her shoulders, Ilara felt a mix of terror and exhilaration. Humanity had dreamed of its place among the stars, and now they were being called to save those very stars from extinction. "We'll do it," she said, her voice ringing with determination. "But on one condition: no more manipulating from the shadows. If we're going to work together, it has to be as equals." The architect's forms pulsed with what might have been surprise, then agreement. "So be it. The age of secrecy is over. Together, we shall forge a new destiny for the galaxy." As Ilara and her team prepared to return to the Defiant, their minds brimming with newfound knowledge and purpose, she knew that the real challenge was just beginning. They would have to convince Earth's leaders, unite a fractured humanity, and then somehow bring together the very alien races they had been on the brink of war with. The galaxy was about to explode, but not in the way anyone had anticipated. And humanity would be at the center of it all, fighting not just for their own survival, but for the very fabric of existence itself. As they boarded their ship, Elara turned to her crew, her eyes blazing with determination. "Set a course for Earth," she ordered. "We have a galaxy to save." Uniting the divided. The return journey to Earth was tense, filled with feverish planning and heated debates. Captain Elara Chen and her crew grappled with the monumental task ahead of them, convincing a divided humanity to unite not just with itself, but with the very aliens they had been prepared to war against. As the Defiant entered Earth's orbit, Elara steeled herself for what might be the most challenging mission of her life. The ship's comm crackled to life with an urgent message from Earth Command. "Captain Chen, report to Emergency Council chambers immediately upon landing. The situation has escalated." Elara exchanged worried glances with Commander Reeves. "Escalated how?" she asked, but the transmission had already cut off. Upon landing, Elara and her senior staff were rushed to the underground bunker that housed Earth's leadership in times of crisis. The atmosphere was thick with tension as they entered the chamber. President Cortez stood at the head of the table, her face grim. "Captain, while you were away, the Zarkonians launched a full-scale assault on our outer colonies. We've lost contact with New Eden and Proxima Aya." Elara's heart sank. Thousands of lives, potentially lost. "Madame President, we have crucial information that changes everything. We need to cease hostilities immediately and—" "Cease hostilities." General Hawk, a grizzled veteran of Earth's earlier conflicts, scoffed. "Captain, we're at war. The Zarkonians have shown their true colors, and it's time we showed ours. I say we unleash everything we've got. Wipe them off the galactic map." The room erupted into heated arguments, with military leaders calling for retaliation and diplomats pleading for caution. Elara watched in dismay as humanity's leadership fractured before her eyes. "Enough," she shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. All eyes turned to her in surprise. "What I'm about to tell you will change everything we thought we knew about our place in the galaxy." Over the next hour, Elara laid out everything they had learned from the architects. The true nature of the tests humanity had faced, the looming threat of the void, and the crucial role Earth would play in the coming conflict. As she finished, a stunned silence fell over the room. It was Dr. Patel who broke it, her voice filled with awe. "The technology the architects have offered us, it's beyond anything we've ever dreamed of. With it, we could end war, hunger, disease. Or we could use it to crush our enemies once and for all." General Hawk interjected, his eyes gleaming. President Cortez held up a hand, silencing further debate. "Captain Chen, the implications of what you're saying are staggering. If what you say is true, we're facing a threat that dwarfs our conflict with the Zarkonians. But how can we possibly unite with a species that's actively attacking our colonies?" Elara took a deep breath. "Madame President, I propose a bold plan. We use the architect's technology to mount a defense of our colonies that the Zarkonians can't ignore. Not to destroy them, but to demonstrate our newfound power. Then we invite them to the negotiating table, not as enemies, but as potential allies against a common threat." The room buzzed with murmurs, some skeptical, others intrigued. President Cortez studied Elara for a long moment before nodding slowly. "It's a risk, but one we have to take. Captain Chen, you have my authorization to proceed. Assemble whatever resources you need." Over the next weeks, Elara and her team worked tirelessly. The Defiant was retrofitted with architect technology, transforming it into a vessel unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. A hand-picked crew of Earth's finest soldiers, scientists, and diplomats was assembled. As they prepared to depart for the embattled colonies, Elara addressed her crew and a watching Earth via global broadcast. "We stand at a crossroads," she began, her voice steady and determined. "For too long, humanity has been divided, by borders, by ideologies, by fear. But now we face a threat that will consume us all if we don't stand united. Not just as a species, but as a galaxy." She paused, letting her words sink in. We go now to extend a hand to those we once called enemies. It won't be easy. There will be those on both sides who cling to old hatreds, who refuse to see the bigger picture. But we must persevere. For in unity lies not just our survival, but our transcendence. As the Defiant pulled away from Earth, its sleek form shimmering with otherworldly energy, Ilara felt the weight of history on her shoulders. They were about to change the course of galactic civilization, or die trying. The ship entered FTL, streaking towards the battlefront where human and Zarkonian forces clashed. Ilara stood on the bridge, her eyes fixed on the stars streaking by. "All hands, prepare for battle," she ordered, her voice filled with resolve. "But remember, our goal isn't destruction. It's illumination. We're here to light the way forward, for all species." As they dropped out of FTL into the chaos of war, the Defiant's new systems hummed to life. Ilara took a deep breath, knowing that the next few moments would determine the fate of not just humanity, but the entire galaxy. "Let's show them what unity can achieve," she said, and gave the order to engage. A light in the darkness. The Defiant erupted into the heart of the battle, its newly integrated architect technology blazing to life. The ship moved with impossible grace, effortlessly evading the barrage of Zarkonian fire, while projecting an energy field that absorbed incoming attacks from both sides. "All hands, execute Operation Lighthouse," Captain Ilara Chen commanded, her voice steady despite the chaos surrounding them. At her word, the Defiant's systems engaged fully. A pulse of pure energy radiated outward, washing over the battlefield. In its wake, weapons powered down, engines stalled, and shields flickered out of existence. Every ship, human and Zarkonian alike, was rendered inert. In the sudden, eerie silence of space, Ilara opened a channel to all vessels. "This is Captain Ilara Chen of the UES Defiant. Your weapons and engines have been temporarily disabled. We mean you no harm. We come with a message of utmost importance for all species of the galaxy." For a moment, there was no response. Then, a gruff voice crackled over the comm. "This is Fleet Commander Vexthor of the Zarkonian Imperial Forces. What sorcery is this, human? Release our ships at once." Ilara took a deep breath. This was the moment of truth. "Commander Vexthor, representatives of Earth, I implore you all to listen. The conflict between our species is meaningless in the face of what's coming. A threat that will consume us all if we don't stand united." Over the next hour, Ilara laid out everything they had learned from the architects. The nature of the void, the tests both species had unknowingly been subjected to, and the crucial role they all had to play in the coming battle for existence itself. As she spoke, holographic data streamed from the Defiant to every ship in the area, providing irrefutable evidence of her claims. She could almost feel the shock and disbelief radiating from both fleets. When she finished, there was a long, tense silence. Then, Commander Vexthor's voice came over the comm again, quieter this time. "If what you say is true, human, then we have all been pawns in a game beyond our comprehension." "Not pawns, Commander," Ilara corrected gently. "Students. And now, it's time for us to graduate, to take our place as guardians of the galaxy." Over the next few days, an uneasy truce settled over the battlefront. The Defiant served as neutral ground for a historic summit between human and Zarkonian leaders. It wasn't easy. Centuries of mistrust and recent bloodshed made for tense negotiations. But faced with the existential threat of the void, even the most hardened warriors began to see the necessity of cooperation. As the summit progressed, Ilara found herself in a quiet moment with Commander Vexthor. The Zarkonian warrior was intimidating up close, his scaled skin shimmering under the ship's lights. "You've taken quite a risk, Captain Chen," Vexthor rumbled. "How did you know we wouldn't simply destroy you the moment you released our ships?" Ilara met his gaze steadily. "I didn't, but I believe that when presented with the truth, even former enemies could see reason. Was I wrong? Vexthor was silent for a long moment, then let out a low chuckle. Perhaps not. You humans continue to surprise us. It's one of your more admirable qualities. As the summit drew to a close, a framework for cooperation began to take shape. Joint task forces were established to study and implement architect technology. Plans were made to reach out to other species, to build a galactic alliance against the coming darkness. But even as hope began to blossom, a shadow loomed. Long-range sensors detected an anomaly at the edge of charted space, a region where stars were going dark. The void was no longer a distant threat. It had arrived. Ilara stood on the Defiance Bridge, watching the unsettling sensor readings with a mix of fear and determination. Beside her, human and Zarkonian officers worked together, their former enmity forgotten in the face of this greater danger. "Orders, Captain." Commander Reeves asked, her voice tense. Ilara straightened her shoulders, her eyes fixed on the view screen. "Set a course for the anomaly, and send word to Earth and the Zarkonian homeworld. Tell them it's time. The fate of everything rests on what we do next." As the Defiant and its newly forged alliance of ships prepared to jump into the unknown, Ilara felt a strange calm settle over her. They were about to face an enemy that threatened the very fabric of existence, but they would face it together, united in a way that would have seemed impossible just weeks ago. "All ships, prepare for jump," she commanded. "We carry with us the hopes of not just our own species, but of all life in the galaxy. Whatever lies ahead, we face it as one." The fleet winked out of existence, hurtling towards a confrontation that would determine the fate of all creation. The galaxy was about to explode into the greatest conflict it had ever known, and humanity, once on the brink of war, now stood at the vanguard of its defense. The edge of everything. The combined human-Zarkonian fleet dropped out of FTL at the fringes of the anomaly. What greeted them defied comprehension. Before them stretched a vast nothingness, a void so absolute it seemed to devour light itself. At its edges, stars flickered and died, pulled into the expanding darkness. On the bridge of the Defiant, Captain Ilara Chen felt a chill run down her spine. "Status report," she ordered, her voice steady despite the fear gnawing at her gut. Lieutenant Kim's fingers flew over her console. "The void is expanding at an exponential rate, Captain. At this pace, it'll reach populated systems within days." Commander Vexthor, now serving as liaison aboard the Defiant, growled low in his throat. "By the ancient stars, it's worse than we imagined. How do we fight?" "Nothing." As if in answer, the ship's systems suddenly hummed with newfound energy. Dr. Patel's excited voice came over the comm. "Captain, the architect technology is reacting to the void. It's reconfiguring itself." Before their eyes, the Defiant began to transform. Its hull shimmered and flowed like liquid metal, weapon systems morphing into configurations never before seen. Similar changes rippled across the other ships in the fleet. A surge of energy washed over the bridge crew, and with it came understanding. The architect's final gift, the knowledge to operate these new systems, to stand against the uncreation itself. Ilara's eyes widened as the information flooded her mind. "All ships prepare to engage. Form up in Stella Nova formation." The fleet moved with newfound grace and purpose, arranging itself into a complex, three-dimensional pattern. At Ilara's command, they fired as one. Lances of pure creation energy burst forth, piercing the veil of nothingness. For a moment, it seemed to have no effect. Then, like cracks spreading across ice, fissures of light began to appear in the void. "It's working," Reeves shouted, excitement overriding protocol. "The void is retreating." But their victory was short-lived. From the depths of the nothingness, something emerged. Vast, shapeless entities of anti-light, embodiments of the void itself. "Void harbingers," Vexthor breathed, giving name to the unamiable. The battle that followed was unlike anything in the history of the galaxy. Ships danced through space, wielding the power of creation against the forces of unmaking. Reality itself seemed to warp and twist around them. Ilara found herself operating on instinct, guided by the architect's knowledge flowing through her. "Concentrate fire on the largest harbinger," she commanded. "All ships, execute supernova protocol." The fleet moved as one, focusing their energy into a single devastating burst. The lead harbinger shuddered and dissolved, but more rose to take its place. Hours blended into days as the battle raged on. Ships were lost, swallowed by the encroaching void. But for every defeat, there was a victory. Another section of space reclaimed, another harbinger banished. Just when it seemed they might be gaining the upper hand, alarms blared across the Defiant. "Captain," Kim cried out, her voice filled with dread. "A void rift is opening. It's massive." A tear in the fabric of reality yawned open before them, large enough to swallow entire star systems. From its depths poured countless harbingers, a tide of uncreation that threatened to overwhelm them. Ilara felt despair threatening to overtake her. How could they stand against this? Then her eyes fell on the unlikely allies around her, humans and Zarkonians working in perfect harmony, united against extinction itself. In that moment, she understood. This was the true test, the reason the architects had chosen them. Not for their technology or their strength, but for their indomitable spirit, their refusal to succumb even in the face of impossible odds. "All ships," she commanded, her voice ringing with determination, "prepare for final protocol. We end this now." The Defiant surged forward, the rest of the fleet falling into formation behind it. They accelerated towards the rift, weapons blazing, pushing their ships beyond all known limits. As they approached the maw of oblivion, Ilara felt a sense of peace wash over her. "It's been an honor," she said softly to her crew, to allies once called enemies, to all those who had stood against the darkness. The fleet plunged into the rift. There was a moment of absolute nothingness, a sensation of being unmade and remade in the same instant. Then, explosion of light so brilliant it seared across all of space-time. When it faded, the void was gone. Where nothingness had reigned, stars now burned brightly. The rift had closed, the harbingers vanquished. On the bridge of the Defiant, battered but unbroken, Ilara looked out at the newly born stars with wonder. "We did it," she breathed. "We actually did it." Cheers erupted across the fleet, a celebration that would soon spread across the galaxy. Human and Zarkonian, once bitter enemies, embraced as brothers in arms. In the years that followed, the alliance forged in that crucible of creation would expand, welcoming other species into its fold. The age of darkness had been averted, replaced by an unprecedented era of cooperation and exploration. And at the heart of it all stood humanity, no longer fighting for mere survival, but leading the charge into a brighter future for all. They had been tested, pushed to their very limits, and had emerged stronger than ever. The galaxy hadn't just exploded, it had been reborn, with humanity and its newfound allies as its guardians. As Ilara looked out at the starfield, teeming with possibility, she smiled. The greatest adventure was just beginning.